Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. ODAT Nerd here. Welcome to the Devlog for Thursday, December 13th, the 13th day of Devember. And what did we work on today between last night and the start of the stream tonight? Not a lot Devember related, although I did do a lot of Sublime related things. I cleaned up my user package because I have several builds of Sublime running on all kinds of computers, and I tend to write stuff on one as I'm doing something and then create a similar copy somewhere else. And then every month or so, I have to synchronize everything, throw away what I don't want, keep what I do, and that's fun. I also, on an unrelated note, discovered that when you use Confluence, you get a lot of error. Well, not error mails. You get a lot of notification-y type mails. Kind of sad about that, but what you're going to do, it's a work project. In the days of Devember, well, we got started tonight by working on the aspect of our build system that tries to discover what files it needs from the local system to shove to the other end to perform the build. Because remember, the idea of our remote build system is not that it's going to assume that you have remote files mounted locally, but that it needs to grab files and push them to the other end. And it'll be smart enough when all is said and done to only push files that have changed since the last time that you executed the build. And to be honest, the use case for this as of right now is for smaller projects, not something like remote building Git and grabbing and having to scan through 10 bajillion T files to go. I'm just assuming Git is a big project. I don't actually know. I know I cloned the repository once and it took a really long time because it's got a lot of history. In any case, to that end, I sort of had a plan in my head for how I wanted to lay this out, but in order to actually do that, we have to go through all of the, steps. So we iteratively designed a solution in Stream to more or less do what we want. Now that includes a couple of things, and one is coming up with the list of folder or folders that we actually want to examine, and then secondarily to that, coming up with the criteria for what should be included and what should be excluded. And there's files and folder includes and excludes, right? So if none of them are set, everything you find goes. If there are only includes, then those files are the only ones included and nothing else. Or those folders are the only ones included and nothing else. If there are excludes and only excludes, then everything is included implicitly, but anything that matches exclude gets thrown away. Um, and ditto for folders and files. If there are includes and excludes, then a file is only included if it matches include and doesn't match exclude. Simple enough in practice. To be honest, there may be more subtlety to it than we were originally thinking of, and we worked out an iterative solution for how to get down to the nub of one particular method that can make the determination of should this file be kept or not. I don't know if this is the actual structure we want, but we need to logically work through how it's supposed to go. Remember the cardinal rule: make it work, then make it pretty. If you try to make things as cool and succinct as possible from the get-go, it's harder to make sure that it's working properly and fix it if it's not, or at least I think so. Now, we discovered as part of the stream that there is, of course, API endpoints for getting the list of folders in a window and getting the project data for a window. And when you call project data, you get a result back for not only windows that actually have a project loaded in them, but also windows that don't have a project, but they have one or more files open. And the project data that you get looks identical to what would appear in a similar Sublime project. And that's probably not an accident. I would imagine the save project command takes that project data and just persists it to disk. Um, certainly when you change project data in an open window on a file that's persisted to disk, Sublime rewrites the project file. So I would assume that's how that works. Now that's good for us because that means that if we call get project data and we get an object back, that object is going to have a folder's key in it. Um, or it should have a folders key in it anyway if there are any folders in that project. And that means that if we want to be able to either take stuff from the build system or take stuff from the project or all those things that we worked out last night. You specify the stuff in the project file. If you don't specify stuff in the project file, it uses just the folders in the window. If you don't specify any folders in the window, then it just uses the current file. We're 90% of the way there just by using window project data. When we get that, then we just use it. If it came from a project, that's good. If it didn't come from a project, we can't tell. It still works. And if that returns nothing, then we know that we should be getting that information from the just the current file, which is really easy to figure out. You just ask the window what the current file view is, and then you ask that view if it has a file name. And if it does, then you got that file name. What we didn't implement here, of course, was the ability for the code to gather this information out of the build file first. But that will be easy enough to cram in later because we do have a method that can iterate over these sort of things. The way it's built, it should be fairly easy to inject that in. Now, all that being said, there is an FN match or file name match thing in Python that allows you to know if files match something in a list. So, using that, we can easily handle our file includes and our file excludes. Now, what we've done is we've created an os.walk loop that recursively scans an entire folder and crams those items into a return list. And actually, it defers, down lower and lower to be asking various questions until it gets to the point of should this file name match. Now, it's pretty easy to be able to say if this file name matches or there's no list of includes, then it matches. And then if it has a list of excludes, take it out. That part's no problem. Turns out what is a problem is matching path name segments. Now, I'm not exactly sure fully how Sublime implements that. So some research on that is in order so we can replicate how it works. But we did work out trivially in the stream that at the very least, if you took a list of path segments and prepended slash characters on them that are appropriate to the platform in question, you could see if that string appears in a file name to know that if it should appear or not. And there can also be other optimizations that I thought of between when the stream ended and now, like when we walk the directory, one of the things we get is the path this file is in. So if we verify that that path is something we don't care about, we can go ahead and just not do anything with any of the files in that path because it matches, which shaves a whole lot of stuff off as well. But we do need to figure out how to do the exclusions first, and then we can bubble them down in the list to make things nicer. So going on in the stream for tomorrow, more of the same of that. And the ultimate goal before we can get much farther in anything is being able to come up with a list of all of the files that we need to transmit to the other side. And then secondarily to that, what structure we use to transmit that information to the other side. Because we want relative file names to send, but we also want to know what path they're rooted in. The server needs to know how path files that it gets were rooted here, so when it rewrites error messages as data is flowing through, that it can know how to do that. That's what we are going to do in the next stream, and now I am going to sign off on this this devlog, start the arduous 15-minute process of getting this thing started rendering. Yes, it really is that simple. It's actually fairly quickly to throw a vlog online if you're not doing any editing at all, and it's only marginally slower if you're doing something like replacing the audio with headset audio instead of crappy camcorder audio in a loud room and just throwing a fade on one end and an animated intro on the other. That's a lesson I've learned this Devember along with everything else. I hope you've been learning lessons along with me in Devember, or at least had a good time throwing popcorn at your monitor when you notice me doing stupid things that you already know the answers to. That is the joy of Devember. And with that, I shall sign off and say, have a sublime day.